Okay, great. Good evening. Good evening, folks on Zoom. We're gonna give it about 2 more minutes. We're very thin in the building. So we will start in 2 minutes. Can someone on Zoom confirm that they can hear us? Melissa is raising her hand. Go ahead, Melissa.
Yes, good evening. We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, perfect. Uh-oh. All right. Okay.
Here.
All right.
But she did have class.
Yes, okay. All right, how is the Zoom camera? Rachel, how's the Zoom camera, since it seems like I'm doing this for Zoom? Should I just station up here? Say it one more time. How's the owl if I just station up here to go through slides?
Oh, great.
It's great?
It's following.
Okay.
I'm gonna send the
Okay,
email
great.
about the non-working life safety sheets at Canova.
All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get started? I want to thank our staff members that are in person, and I want to welcome all of our webinar participants on Zoom. Really glad you can join us tonight for information and input related to our fiscal stabilization plan. This is session 1. It's titled Assessing Our Financial Outlook, and the fiscal stabilization plan is a part of our superintendent's 100-day plan. Over the next 90 days, we will be both providing information and asking for input to inform this plan to support our financial outlook. I am Dr. Kim Moses. I am the Associate Superintendent of Business Services, also referred to as the Chief Business Officer. And I am extremely glad to be here tonight to provide information for you. I'd like to welcome our school board member for our trustee for Area 1. Trustee Smith Folds is here with us tonight. Thank you so much for your support. We also have a director from our Business Services Office supporting the presentation tonight, Mr. David Malonzo. And thank you to the rest of the staff who are here to support. So this is session 1, and we want to acknowledge your interest and thank you for joining us so that we can gather your input. We value your participation. And in this session, our goal is to work to understand and address our fiscal solvency. So our objectives for this evening are to share information about our finances, build an understanding of how our schools are funded, answer questions about the WCC USD budget, and share ideas to support our road to fiscal stabilization. Since the majority of our participants this evening are on Zoom, we will take hands for the input portion of tonight's presentation. I also want to share that the slides that we are sharing with you this evening can be accessed using this QR code. And I will ask, I would like for staff to get the link put into the chat, but that is going to take us a moment. So hopefully you can utilize your phones to access the slides if you'd like to follow along at your own pace. So this evening is the start of a 5-part journey. We'll have 5 sessions. This is session 1. And what we're doing during these initial assessments is a budget assessment. We want to share information with you to analyze our projections and review our revenue, our sources, and our existing financial obligations. There'll be 4 other parts to the stabilization planning series. And the second part is gonna be to analyze root causes and analyze the potential impacts to our budget, to our student services and programs, so that together we're learning more, becoming informed, and also providing valuable input to inform the process. Rachel, are you able to manage hands? There's a hand in the air. Since we have a smaller group, I'd like to acknowledge that.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Okay, the hand went down, but, in the spirit of collecting input, we will honor your hands throughout the presentation so that we can build information and understanding for you. The third part of our series is gonna be to identify and share potential actionable goals related to our budget and our student services. And we hope to take those goals into our 4th step, which is designing actionable strategies that both meet the needs of our students and address our fiscal stabilization as well. And then finally, the last part of this plan is to create the plan, move forward with implementation and monitoring, and continue to engage the community as we implement and monitor our stabilization plan moving forward. So I wanted to start off this evening's presentation with just an understanding or an initial understanding of how schools are funded. School budgets are intricate and complicated to a degree, but we have several different funds. But for our unrestricted general fund, that is our operating budget, under which we plan for the required services and programs for our students. We also have another fund called the Restricted General Fund, and those budgets are made up of grants. So I'd first like to review this initial information about our unrestricted general fund. The unrestricted budget are the monies that are provided to our school district primarily by the state of California through taxpayer dollars to operate our required services and programs for our students. This funding primarily is based on a formula of average daily attendance for our students. Now, based upon the attendance, we're assigned a budget, and that operating budget assumes all ongoing base expenses for our schools year over year. We also have a second component to the general fund, and that's the restricted monies. These budgets are made up of grants that are awarded to our district departments and school sites for specifically named services. The funding in this restricted category are provided for a fixed amount of time. And when the funding is exhausted, the services and or personnel paid for through these restricted resources cease to exist unless another available funding source becomes available. So spending must follow grant rules and expectations, and this money is what we refer to as soft money or one-time monies. It does not get worked into our ongoing operational budget year over year. So a little bit more on how our school district is funded. So there are several factors that go into how monies are assigned based upon our average daily attendance. If we look at the table on the top, this outlines the local control funding formula, which we refer to as LCFF, for our students across the grade levels. You'll notice that for the grade levels, the amount of the adjusted base grant varies. So if you're a TK to 3 student, the amount that we get per student who attends school each day is $11,323. If you move over to our older students, the upper elementary students, is decreased slightly. And then 7 through 8, they're similar, but a slight increase there. And then 9 to 12, there is a general increase because of the specialized programs that go with high school. When we calculate our funding, we use an average of these and the average daily attendance in order to estimate our projected budget for the following years. There are several formulas we use in order to build that amount. Across the years, those numbers are solidified by the attendance data that we provide to the state. I also want to share that our enrollment is different from our average daily attendance. And I'll use the example of last school year. Last school year, our total enrollment for TK to 12 was 25,273 students. However, the average number of students attending our schools each day was 23,312 students, which means only 92.24% of our students are attending each day. So we got funded at a rate of 92.24%. That means that approximately 2,000 of our enrolled students, we were unable to collect any revenue for. That impacts our bottom line with our budgeting, because for every 1,000 students, the actual amount that we would collect is about $11 million. So missing 2,000 students, and I do acknowledge it's rare to get 100%, but we strive for 95. If we just get to that 95 rate, we could see an increase of our budget of an additional $10 million. That is the difference in the average daily attendance and our enrollment rate and how we fund our schools. I will also add that we're providing an education for 100% of our students, even though we're only being funded for 92.24% of them. This complicates things as we work out our staffing matrix to provide all the services for all students when we are not collecting money for all students. That's one of the major issues. I'd also like to share this graph over time related to our funding. We've talked about enrollment, which is the blue bar. We've talked about average daily attendance, which is this dotted red line. What I'd also like to share is the funded average daily attendance rate, which since COVID has been a 3-year average of the number of students that we've served. This 3-year average was created in order for our budget not to take a steep decline during the COVID years. And therefore, we've been receiving more funding than average daily attendance over time. What you'll notice in our current year of 25-26, the 3-year average of how we're funded, we're no longer seeing the buffer of the previous benefit of being able to do an average. Our average is starting to flatline out. So our dollars, we are receiving less dollars in real time because over time, our average daily attendance continues to decline. One of our goals is to increase that so that we can also increase that revenue source. So I also wanted to share not only how we get our money, but the values that we've placed on the budget that we have. What we're looking at here in the blue bar is our revenue. This is the money year over year that the district collects in the unrestricted operating budget. This orange bar is the amount of expense that we attribute to our budget to operate all of our schools and departments on the unrestricted side of the house, which is the monies for our operating budget. It does not include those grant resources. However, when we look at this green line actually represents the salaries and benefits in the unrestricted general fund and in the areas of contributions that we must make to our special education department and our routine restricted maintenance. So this green line represents all of the money in our unrestricted general fund that is paid out to salaries and benefits for our valuable staff. As you can see, this orange line and these current years are exceeding the blue line. We call this our structural deficit. We're spending more money than we're bringing in. And you can see where the majority of our money is being placed. It's in our human resources and our personnel. So as we work to adjust our budget so that our expenses are not exceeding our revenue, we have some tough, difficult decisions to make ahead. I wanted to also share that we do believe as a district, we have over the years, given the increases that we are able to give for all of our valuable staff. So if you'll notice, this is estimated, this is our unrestricted general fund, and it's showing how over time our revenue sources have increased. So since 2017, we've had an increase of 26% in the revenue that we bring in to support our schools. At the same time, we've had a 41% increase of the contributions to our special education program. So as we are increasing our revenue, we are also increasing our contributions to special programs, and we'll see the impact of that shortly. I also want to share that as our revenue has increased 26%, question, Superintendent Cotton is here. Welcome, Superintendent Cotton.
Thank you, Dr. Moses. Can you go back to that previous slide?
Yes.
Can you explain what the contributions to restricted programs, what that means?
Absolutely. So it is a mandate in the state of California that required programs for student services be fully funded. For us in our district, our biggest contribution is to our special education program. That is a required program, and they are currently grossly underfunded. The amount that we're contributing to our special education programs and services is about 98 million in the previous school year. And that is because the special education budget is underfunded by that amount. Every service, every classroom, every staff member working in the special education department is a mandate under the state that we have to pay, and so that is what this amount is, and it's been increasing over the years. I believe it's increased by about 50% in the last 8 years.
Thank you.
You're welcome. At the same time, we've tried to stay competitive with our compensation. So we showed an increase of 26% for our revenues. We've also shown an increase of 25% in certificated salaries over the same time. For benefits, well, health and welfare benefits, we've seen an increase of 44% over this time. For our classified salaries and classified employees, we've seen an increase of 22%. For our service and operating expenditures, this is us keeping the lights on and ensuring that we have the contracts in place to ensure safe schools and operating functionally. That's increased 27%. At the same time, what you're going to see down here for books, materials, and supplies is a decrease. Now, that is not because we're investing less in our materials and supplies, but these materials and supplies are often one-time purchases. We've found creative ways to use our restricted one-time monies to cover lots of our materials and supplies needs. So in order to adjust some of these other increasing expenses, we were able to use one-time monies to fund lots of our materials and supplies and books, which is why you see a decrease there. We're still purchasing those things, but we're able to tap into a one-time resource. A couple more slides and then we're going to open it up to questions. How many people do we have on Zoom, Rochelle? Oh, no worries, you can check mine, yeah. Okay, we're gonna encourage some input shortly, and so I just wanna make sure we're able to do that. I don't know how our numbers are growing. So I wanted to share with you the WCC USD budget at a glance. This is our 45-day revised budget, which is our most current numbers. The approved budget by our school board was approved in June. Shortly after that approval, we did get some additional funding. And when that happens and it's significant, we have to do a revise. So this revise will reflect in our December report, but for the purposes of sharing our actual numbers with you, I wanted to share this revised budget this evening. So what we're looking at is some of the very things that we've been talking about. The first line represents our total revenues. The second line represents our total expenditures. I've tried to share with you here our combined budget, which is that unrestricted budget we've been talking about, which are our operational dollars, along with the restricted budget, which are the grant dollars that have an expiration date on them and are set aside for specific purposes. An interesting fact about the restricted budget is that when we get large grants, typically we'll get all of the grants in one lump sum, but we may have 3 to 5 years to spend those grants. And therefore, you'll see large balances such as the $73.2 million balance in the restricted fund. But actually, restricted funds actually come with budgets and mandates. And so these monies that are here are actually set aside for future years of restricted grants. This column here, labeled combined, actually combines the restricted and the unrestricted budget so that you can see the total amount in our what we call Fund 01, okay, which is our general fund. What you'll see here is a couple of things. The red numbers represent our deficit spending. In the unrestricted budget for this current year, we have to contribute we're projected to contribute 108.3 million to our restricted programs. That leaves us with a $15.9 million deficit, which we are using our reserves in order to cover. Fund 17 is our district reserves for economic uncertainty. We find ourselves in uncertain times where we must use this fund in order to cover our current liability because of the structural deficit. Another way to say that is the deficit spending. So what we're finding is that with this, we actually have to set aside as a requirement of the state, a 3% state reserve for economic uncertainty. And that's 3% of our total expenditures for the prior year. So that 3% amount is $15.5 million. We are expected to just make that amount with just our stores available because we have estimated the exact expenditure to make us whole and meet this requirement. But what this means is that in this year, these Fund 17 reserves are in essence supporting us to meet ends meet. But at the same time, we see that these reserves are declining greatly, and they are the equivalent of a savings account. Once those reserves are spent, they are gone, and we have to find another way to increase reserves at a later time so that we can continue to have something to fall back on. So I wanted to share here this full budget picture, which I can explain more during questions and answers. But I just want to share here that this is the 108 million that we have to spend out to restricted programs. And you can see here that the 108 million is going into this balance because it is what we owe to contribute to those required programs. So it goes out of the unrestricted and into the restricted. Okay. I wanted to give you some examples of restricted general fund accounts. And I know this is small. Apologies for that. And this is a budget slide from our unaudited actuals from the prior year. We'll have an updated slide really soon as we'll be doing our unaudited actuals presentation at the next regular school board meeting. But I wanted to share that in the restricted fund, our money is for child nutrition. In the restricted fund are monies for our school community grants. And the restricted funds are block grants provided to us by the state, for example, learning recovery block grants. But we can actually list all of the programs and their balances to show the restricted uses for those monies and why they can't be added to the unrestricted general fund in order to fund ongoing day-to-day expenses or program expenses. So I'm going to pause here and I believe, do I need to make you co-host ratio for you to? Okay, let me pause for a moment. But before I do, I want to share that we'd like to have some input from our participants on Zoom. I'm happy to answer any questions or comments about our budget. If you have questions about how we're funded or what our expense and budget planning looks like, I'm here to answer those questions for you. But we're also interested in having you to think through some of these challenges with us and give us feedback and input on that. For example, we know that the bulk of our monies is coming from attendance. How can we generate more revenue? And we can translate that into a question of how can we increase average daily attendance, right? What are some of the things we can do? Also, how can we address the rising costs with our limited funding? One of the issues we're running into is we have ongoing costs year over year. However, those costs are rising at a rate greater than our revenue is rising, and that's contributing to our fiscal outlook. Also, as we begin to move forward with creating this fiscal stabilization plan, what are the processes we can use to prioritize programs and services as we work to solve this issue together? Any ideas, any input related to moving forward, what might be helpful to this process is welcome. So this next slide has our questions here, but this is actually for our participants on Zoom, because we wanted to ensure that there was a way for you to give feedback if you weren't with us in person. We're fortunate this evening in that we can open up hands for questions. However, this is a Google form that can be shared with anyone who wants to give input on answering these questions for this first round of meeting to inform our planning for our next round of meetings. So I'll stop here and I will make Director Forrest a co-host so that we can take questions on Zoom or questions in the room. Okay?
I think we learned something.
All right.
That was really good.
All right. Okay, and we have our first hand.
It's just.
Okay, I'm gonna exit the presentation for just a moment so that we can get Rachel promoted. All right, so thank you, Director Forrest. She will field questions and I will put the presentation back up. So that we can reference those questions. And we have Director David Luongo here, who is going to capture questions and answers and take them back to the committee for input. So Director Forrest, you want to take the first hand?
We first have Mr. David.
Hi, I just wanted to say thanks for hosting these presentations. I've kind of sat through a lot of the budget or looked through a lot of the budget presentations over the years, from the days of Tony Wold through Robert McIntyre, and just kind of had a lot of observations over the years. I think the general story that's been communicated has been the same as far as the impact of declining enrollment. One of the things that I saw presented, I want to say back in May, at a budget presentation, it showed, it was a bar chart. It showed contributions from the unrestricted fund towards special education increasing from, I believe it was something like 32 million in the 2017-2018 school year to, as you mentioned, 95 million, which is a tripling. And I think it's important, if you show that data, it's very important to say why that is the case. What are the driving factors there? Because that would seem to be significantly outpacing any increase in enrollment or the potential increase in enrollment in special education. So that's a question that I have, and that in terms of transparency to the community, it's important to be able to explain the why and not just, that the numbers are going up. Yeah, that was my question, I guess.
Yes, thank you for your question, David. It is important to explain what's happening there, so I appreciate the opportunity. So several things are happening in our special education department that are driving up our costs. One is that we're finding that the needs of students, especially post-COVID, are more intensive, and therefore there are more services being prescribed for those students in order to support at an appropriate level. At the same time, if you notice the slide that I showed where revenue has increased 26%, so have salaries increased about that same amount. Well, as we increase salaries district-wide, there is no increase in the special education budget, so all of those increases are added to the contribution. At the same time, there are other drivers for special education that include specialized cases like students with extensive needs needing to be referred out to non-public schools. And also the cost of ensuring that we have a fully staffed class to meet our most intensive, the needs of our most intensive students. Just to throw a number out, we have over 700 paraprofessionals that are assigned to support our special education students. And in many of our classrooms, the ratios of adult to student are more, I'd say similar to 2-to-1, 3-to-1, as opposed to the intended staffing matrix prior to the increase in the need for additional services for students. I think the other thing that I'll add is that it's rare for a special education student to have just one program need. So you may have a student receiving speech services, occupational therapy services at the same time that they're in a specialized classroom and receiving curriculum designed especially for them. We're needing to follow the individual education plan for each special education student, and that's driven by their needs and not by a budget. Because we are invested and we value ensuring that our most neediest students have the services that we need. Those are services that we continue to provide, even though it's driving up the cost. David, did that answer your question? Is there any additional information I could provide that might be helpful?
I guess what I'm just trying to, yes, that helps. But I think if when data is presented like that, it would really help to put, say, like the top 3 factors driving the increase on the slide with the data. Something along those lines. So it's clearer because obviously if the projections for future years were showing those costs plateauing out a lot. And so, it's important to convey that you have confidence in those projections, right? Because if those are off and the costs continue closer to the rate they have been, then that's also hugely problematic budget-wise, right?
Yes, I understand. It's important to show what the drivers are in the slides, and that's great feedback. So I'll incorporate that with the future presentations. And just to drive your point forward, one of the things I examined today in our budget are utility costs. And we had an increase of PG&E costs this year of $1.5 million. We went from spending under $5 million for utility costs to spending, I believe my number is about $6.5 million this current year. So that would be important to show in a slide. And to your point, it would be, I think, powerful to share that with our special education expenditures as well. So I appreciate that feedback. And Superintendent Cotton has a hand. Go ahead.
Hi, David, just to add a little bit more, in recent conversations with other districts, I know, had a conversation with a board member in San Francisco. And where they have roughly 50,000 students that they serve, that contribution level to special education is over 200 million. And so it's a trend and it's a need, a phenomenon that's happening across our state. I wouldn't say it's specific to West Contra Costa.
No, I'm not doubting that. Just in terms, I mean, I've also kind of looked at some of the ballpark numbers, and it's sort of clear large districts like ours have been impacted by the charters kind of pulling out a significantly lower needs population, I guess you could say, in terms of special education enrollments. That's kind of almost universal in our district. And similar things are in other kind of large districts like ours.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, thank you for lifting that up, and look for that in a future presentation. We'll provide those numbers
Right.
for you.
Also, why is it black?
David, do you have a second question? Oh, okay. All right.
No more hands.
Okay. There are no more hands. There we are, Mr. Nelson. Hi, Mr. Nelson. All right.
Hi
Are
there,
we
thank
ready?
you. I'm going to ask a really simple question. I showed up late. Are you going to make this available to watch online?
Question. I think we can. Yeah, absolutely. We can post this. Mhm.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. That was easy, Mr. Nelson. Are there any other hands this evening? Any questions? I encourage everyone to provide feedback to inform the process moving forward. If you are a little shy raising your hand tonight, it's your feedback that we solicit and that we value. So please understand that that is our goal this evening, to get your input. And I see we have another hand. Go ahead, Chris.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for the presentation. I know that we've been seeing declining attendance, but have there been any schools or communities in which the attendance actually has like increased or improved over the years?
That is a great question that I think I'll need to gather some data on. I'm sure that enrollment and attendance is different in different areas, but I can't speak to that this evening. I'm happy to put something together for a future presentation. That's
Yeah,
helpful.
that'd be interesting because perhaps there are some schools that have done great work and progress in that area, and I think it'd be beneficial to see as a district how we could replicate that.
I will take it. Thank you.
Chris, just to add a little bit more, I know that we're working with the County Office of Education, and so there's 18 districts within Contra Costa County, and getting some tools and some supports from our county office around attendance, increasing attendance, and our attendance campaign. And so some of the work that we're doing here is based on best practices that have been seen across our county.
Okay, cool. That's good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Any other hands this evening?
No more.
Any questions from our in-person crew?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. The
Please.
presentation that LaShante did last year, LaShante Smith did last year about the why, and looking at the different areas of why students did not go to school, I think was very helpful. And then trying to address those whys would be really good for a focal point maybe this year. I know that, for example, in San Pablo, it was students taking care of siblings was a why. Richmond, it was transportation. So how do we use the Richmond rides or the Richmond, maybe saying the name wrong, but
That's the
moves,
Richmond.
moves, how do we use that to help us with getting kids to school, the bus pass system, all of those things? How do we, I think Hercules or Pinole was going on vacation, so how do we do Independence Day, right? How do we just address the whys by educating the families about, one, school is important, two, here's a resource to kind of remedy the problem that you may be having.
Yes.
I think just as the goals we are trying to build on that work, and had both a cross-departmental internal conversation with folks who have an impact or involvement in student attendance. And that conversation that we just started, so that internal task force is going. We also met with our schools and neighborhood action team, SNAPS, last week as well, and went through a root cause analysis process with those community partners. So from supports that they provide outside of school, what are they seeing as impacting attendance as well? So it's kind of 2.0, continuing to build and get more information and a better understanding of what's causing chronic absenteeism. How do we get ahead of it before it becomes chronically absent? And then supporting our students. So we're trying to tap into both our knowledge, our internal expertise, but then also the expertise of our community partners out there as well.
I think that we should also maybe add the All-Student Congress
Yes.
and let that be one of their projects or one of their research points, because they are tapping into the students and because they're tapping into secondary students all over. And I don't know if we see more absences at secondary than elementary, or if there is a reason why we would see. I think it may be an issue of control. You know, parents kind of take you when you're in elementary school, where they have more control over you missing or not. But just those, to your point, having that kind of all 360-degree kind of focus on attendance, I think works. Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
All right, Mr. Nelson, go ahead. Did you unmute? Mr. Nelson, you're unmuted.
There we go. Following up on, can you hear me?
Yeah.
What Trustee Fiscal just said. Yeah, student involvement, I think, is a really key idea. In my classroom, I think about teaching and what are my resources, and people, the students are a resource I use a lot for, when I can't do everything myself, I think about how to get help from them. And they have so many ideas and they're so energized and they want to help. So how can we use the All Student Congress and be able to bring more people into that? And it's cross site. And I get really excited about that.
That's amazing. We also have where all of our city council members meet together. And one of their focuses is the attendance, ensuring that students are showing up at school every day. I don't know if Superintendent Cotton wants to speak to that.
We've started a planning meeting we actually had a planning meeting last week with Supervisor John Joya to talk through what our systems collaborative conversation is going to be at the end of the month. And we also are talking about attendance. So I'm trying as best as I can to kind of tap into those folks who are engaged with our kids, either in school or outside of school, and figure out ways, what trends are you seeing and how do we continue to support? Drilling down, I think at kids here. It's also, that's absenteeism. If they're not at school, they're not learning. If they're also not at school, we are not getting the resources to support them. But it's also, the bigger picture is looking at enrollment and what we can do to improve our enrollment. But I think that is continuing to make our schools very desirable places. I'm sitting here in Hercules High School's library, and it's a gorgeous space, a gorgeous peaceful space for kids. So showcasing the great things that we're doing across the district, the great learning that's happening across the district, the great environments that we have set up for students, I think is a big piece of hopefully bringing that enrollment back to our district.
Yes. But I think I also want to lift up the great work that's being done at our sites. Our site leaders are working really hard to ensure that as a school community, they're focused on getting our students in classrooms each day and making sure that the environments are environments that are welcoming and exciting for learning. So I want to lift that up too, that it isn't just a district initiative, but site by site, there's lots of great work going on to increase attendance and support raising our enrollment. So, all right, are there any other questions from the Zoom? There we go. David has another question. All right, you're unmuted, David.
Yeah, and just in terms of revenue, is there any I don't know if this is something the district can spur. Is there any, what is the mechanism for us as community members to kind of go pester these, try to pressure the state to increase funding for, like, say, special education? Because as you mentioned, there's appears to be some significant underfunding there. So is it just us? Is there an way we can get organized rather than just individually us, spamming our state assembly members? Is that anything the district can help organize?
You bring up a great idea. I'm not sure what we've done in the past around that, but it's always a good idea to lobby our, our state assembly persons and those who are making these decisions in Sacramento to fund our schools at a higher rate. I think that's a great idea, and I hear, maybe we have someone to support and spearhead that. In addition, I want to plug our parcel tax, which is expiring in 2027. We will be recruiting a committee to support with that as well. So, Mr., is it Baloo?
Yeah,
I'd love it if, we could connect and get going with some of that work. If you're interested, it's a great idea. Anything to add, Superintendent Cotton?
Yes, so I would say absolutely, you're not spamming. And I think that our elected officials are paying attention to what we have to say. I agree that hearing from more than one person makes a difference, but even one person can make that difference. I spent the last 4 years advocating in front of our education committees for both our state senate and our state assembly. I'm not saying that as a bragging thing, but I'm saying that as they're listening and they're coming up with ideas. They're grasping for what can we do to make our education system better here in California, and are very open, I believe, to great ideas. Also, our state superintendent, who was a legislator for many years and who continues to legislate for our schools across the state, is another resource for us, and he's local. He lives in Richmond. Kids went to West Contra Costa schools, and so being able to really tap into those elected officials who are ready to see things move differently, we've got their attention. We just have to come with a plan.
Thank you for that. Chris has a hand? Go ahead, Chris, you're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. So I heard that you were talking about having a committee working on the parcel tax further down the road. And I think that that's a great idea, and that it's important to get that parcel tax passed. I think it'd be great to have people in the committee like families, students, teachers or staff in the district to also have input, because there's probably a lot of great ideas. They know people in the community. There's a lot of work that's already been done in terms of community organizing, and tapping into that, as well as some community-based organizations in the district, I think would be really, really beneficial. It'll go a really long way if we use the assets that our communities have already.
Thank you for that. Absolutely agree. We've just started the work of moving this forward, working with Godby and Associates, a research firm, to find out what the temperature is in our community for this work, so that we're sure that we're presenting something that will be received well. But we will advertise, and we will try and rally all of our families and community members around this effort. So please look out for those informational flyers that are soon to come.
Okay, great. That's awesome. And yeah, for example, like San Pablo and Richmond have low voter registration and turnout. And I think that's something to look forward to as well. But yeah, it's good to hear about that, and thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right, great input and great comments. I appreciate that. Is there anyone who has a hand tonight that we can answer? There seemed to be something in the chat. Rachel, is that a question in the chat?
It might be, your computer, if Rachel just joined after.
Okay, we'll take a minute and double check that. How about that? Are there any other hands before we see if there's a question in the chat? Okay, before I check that, I just want to share our message. We are one West Contra Costa, one district, one budget. And we just want to reiterate that collectively, we are addressing this structural deficit And our goal is to maintain quality and strong essential programs and services for our schools, for our students, for our community. We believe that together we will be able to achieve this, and that will continue to be in the driver's seat with the decisions related to our schools, our students, and our programs. We recognize that communication is key. And so this is the first of a 5-part series where we're trying to provide really transparent, efficient information, not just so that you're in the know, but that you can hold us accountable and understand the requirements that we're facing. Organizational change is hard. And in order to achieve change across the organization, we need everyone, all of our partners' input to support in that effort. So I'm gonna check the chat, but I just want to extend a thank you, and I don't know if Superintendent Cotton wants to say anything.
I just want to say thank you, and we are one, and this is one of the ways that we can embody. We are oneness is by really understanding and embracing our budget, understanding our fiscal responsibilities, each of us. Also, we've got more to come. And
Yes.
so what's the next session and next go round and the dates for that?
Oh, very good question. I'm wondering if I can get Director Forrest to pull up that flyer. I can tell you that this, we're trying to hit all of our areas. So tonight's meeting was in Hercules. We are repeating this meeting tomorrow night for our Richmond community at Richmond High and their library. We're also repeating this a 3rd time on Thursday at the El Cerrito High School Library, so that we can give these presentations to all of the corners of our district in an effort to try and engage more community members. In addition, the session 2 will be starting shortly after. I believe that starts on October 9th, but that is from memory. I'm asking Director Forrest to double check that for us. But we will highly publicize session 2 when it is ready to get started. In addition, I want to plug, we are reigniting our district budget engagement committee, which is different from the stabilization committee. The first meeting of that committee is going to be September 30th. This committee is actually going to do a deep dive, not only into our fiscal outlook, but also into our budget cycles in order to inform decisions that are being made by our district leaders and school boards across the year. So these sessions are to support our stabilization planning. There is another group of meeting called the District Budget Engagement Committee, which we call them the DBEC. And that first meeting is September 30th. All meetings will be accessible by webinar so that anyone who wants to listen in is able to do just that. And please tell a friend if they missed tonight's presentation, they can join us tomorrow at Richmond High or Thursday at El Cerrito.